My son raised a glass at my birthday dinner and said his wife's parents were the only people he could truly count on. I remember looking around the table after he said it. Nobody moved. Nobody looked at me. I just sat there, smiling like I hadn't heard it, while my hands tightened under the tablecloth. The next morning, before Ryan was even awake, I sat inside a realtor's office signing papers to sell the duplex he'd been living in for 4 years. By the time he poured his first cup of coffee that morning, the house he thought would someday belong to him was already halfway out of his hands. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name's Daniel Mercer. I'm 67 years old, retired electrician, widower for almost 11 years now. I lived in one side of a duplex outside Portland. Ryan lived in the other side with his wife Claire and my grandkids Lily and Ben. The setup was supposed to be temporary. Ryan lost his job during the pandemic, and I told him they could stay there for a while until things stabilized. 6 months, maybe a year. Instead, 4 years passed without anybody really talking about leaving. Truth is, I stopped bringing it up because having them close made the place feel less empty after my wife, Ellen, died. When Ellen was alive, the house always had noise in it. Music from the kitchen, her humming while folding laundry. The television too loud because she refused to wear hearing aids. After she passed, the silence settled into the walls. Some nights, I used to leave the television running just to hear another voice in the room. Helping Ryan made me feel needed again. At least that's what I told myself. Their side of the duplex should have rented for nearly $2,000 a month. I charged them $600, sometimes nothing. I paid for repairs, helped with groceries, covered utilities when they got behind. When Claire needed a babysitter, I was the first call. Actually, not even a call most times. More like an announcement. One Tuesday afternoon, I called Ryan to ask if he wanted to watch the game with me Saturday night, straight to voicemail. I waited a few hours and tried again around dinner. Still nothing. About an hour later, my phone finally rang. "Hey, Dad," he said fast, distracted. I could hear traffic in the background. I smiled anyway. "Hey, busy day?" "Yeah, listen. Bathroom sink upstairs is leaking again. Think you can help us with a plumber? We're stretched pretty thin right now." That was it. "No, sorry I missed your call. No, how have you been?" "Just the leak." I looked down at the sandwich sitting untouched on my plate. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'll handle it." "Knew I could count on you," he said. Then the line went dead. I sat there staring at the blank TV screen for a while after that, not really thinking. Just sitting there with the phone still in my hand. The following Saturday, Claire knocked on my door so lightly I almost missed it. By the time I opened it, she was already walking back toward her car keys. "Kids will be over around noon," she said. "Ryan and I are going to a wine thing downtown." I frowned a little. "Claire, nobody asked me." She stopped and looked genuinely confused for a second. "Oh, Ryan said you'd probably be okay with it." "Probably." Funny how one word can stick in your head all day. At noon, Lily and Ben showed up dragging little backpacks behind them. Claire kissed the top of Lily's head, told them to behave, then drove away before I could even answer. "No, thank you." "No, sorry for the short notice." Nothing. I kept making excuses for things like that back then. Young couples get stressed. Money problems make people distracted. Ryan works hard. I repeated those thoughts constantly because the alternative hurt too much. A few weeks later, we all had dinner together on their side of the duplex. Claire's parents were there, Harold and Denise, the kind of people who smiled politely without ever really warming up to you. Harold wore expensive sweaters even inside the house. Denise corrected people's grammar without realizing she was doing it. I was halfway through telling a story about Ryan crashing his bike into our mailbox when he was 12. Ryan interrupted me without even looking up from his plate. "Dad, can you pass the potatoes?" I handed them over. Then everybody kept talking like I'd never opened my mouth in the first place. I remember sitting there quietly while Claire laughed with her parents about wine tours and ski trips. At some point, I realized I felt like a guest in property I actually owned. That feeling stayed with me. A month later, Ryan came over carrying a six-pack. He set it on the counter, but never opened one. "Need a favor," he said. I almost smiled because by then I already knew every conversation was heading toward money somehow. Claire's parents were visiting for the week, and Ryan wanted to take them downtown. Nice dinners, all that. "Think we can hold rent another month?" he asked casually. "Things are tight right now." I glanced through the window behind him. Brand new grill sitting on the patio. Huge television box still near the living room wall. I looked back at him. "Sure," I said after a second. "Knew you'd understand." That phrase again. I noticed something later that night while sitting at my kitchen table with my checkbook open. Every conversation with my son somehow ended with me paying for something. Not once in months had he called just to talk. A few weeks later, Claire texted asking if I could grab groceries because they were overwhelmed. I bought 2 full bags and walked them next door. Before I reached the kitchen, I heard Claire laughing with 2 women in the dining room. "Oh my God, his furniture still smells like the 90s, she said. The women laughed. Claire kept going. "The whole duplex feels old. Once it's ours, we're gutting everything anyway." I stopped in the hallway holding grocery bags in both hands. For a second, I honestly thought about leaving the bags right there and walking out. Then I stepped into the kitchen quietly. Claire jumped a little when she saw me. "Oh, Daniel, you didn't have to carry all that yourself." Amazing how respectful people become once they realize you heard them. Thanksgiving hurt more than I expected. Ryan called 2 days before. "Hey, Dad, plans changed." I already knew before he said it. Claire's family rented a ski cabin for the holiday. "We'll celebrate together another time," he said quickly. "You know how important this is for her parents." Her parents, not us, not family. Just her parents. That Thanksgiving I heated frozen turkey slices in the microwave and ate alone while snow came down outside the kitchen window. Later that night, Ryan texted me a photo. Everybody smiling in matching sweaters beside a fireplace. I stared at the picture for a long time before deleting it. December came cold and rainy. Ryan knocked on my door one evening looking nervous. "Lily got accepted into private school," he said proudly. "Deposits due Friday." "That's good news," I said. "It's $4,000. I leaned back slowly in my chair. "That much?" "It's Lily's future, Dad." I looked at the expensive jacket he was wearing, the new watch on his wrist. "You'll pay me back?" "Absolutely," he said immediately, too quickly. But Lily walked into the room, right then smiling with one of Ellen's old dimples. And just like that, I folded. Because saying no felt like risking the last pieces of family I still had. My birthday dinner happened 3 weeks later. Claire insisted on hosting it. I paid for the steaks, wine, dessert, decorations, all of it. Still, that night felt nice at first. The kids were laughing. Music played softly in the background. Candlelight reflected off the windows. For a little while, I actually felt included again. Then Ryan stood up. holding his wine glass. "To family," he said. Everyone smiled. Then he turned toward Harold and Denise. "Honestly, Claire's parents are the only people we can really count on no matter what." The room went still. Not dramatic, just uncomfortable. I felt my stomach tighten. Claire stared down at her plate immediately. Even Harold looked awkward. But Ryan kept going, like nothing happened. They've always been there for us. Always. I looked around slowly. The dining room I renovated myself, the mortgage payments, the school deposit, the utility bills, the groceries sitting in their fridge. Always. I smiled because sometimes older men get good at hiding humiliation in public. After dinner, everybody left quickly. I stayed behind stacking plates, while Claire loaded leftovers into containers. Nobody asked me to help. I just didn't know what else to do with myself. Around midnight, I carried trash bags outside. That's when I heard Ryan through the patio door. "Dad won't do anything," he said casually. I froze. "He needs us more than we need him." Claire laughed softly. "He'd never risk losing access to the kids." Something inside me went very quiet after that. Then Claire answered a phone call on speaker. I heard her laughing with a friend. "Once the duplex is ours, we're ripping all his outdated stuff out anyway." Both of them laughed. I stood there in the cold, holding a trash bag, while everything suddenly made sense. The ignored calls, the fake politeness, the constant favors, the assumptions. None of it was temporary. They already saw my home as theirs. And me, just the old man paying for it until he died. I barely slept that night. At 6 a.m, I sat alone at my kitchen table with cold coffee and Ellen's picture beside the window. I kept hearing Ryan's voice over and over. "He needs us more than we need him." That sentence changed something in me, not anger, something colder than that. I finally realized the only reason they held power over me was because I kept pretending the disrespect wasn't real. At 9 that morning, I met with a realtor. 2 days later, I met with an attorney. I changed my will, removed Ryan as executor, canceled the utility payments tied to their side of the duplex, stopped the tuition transfers. Then I listed the property for sale, quietly. No arguments, no warning speeches, just paperwork. A retired couple made a cash offer 10 days later. I accepted immediately. Only after everything was finalized did I walk next door carrying the envelope. Ryan sat at the counter scrolling his phone while Claire helped Lily with homework. I placed the papers in front of him. "What's this?" "Legal notice." He frowned while reading. Then his face drained of color. "What the hell is this?" "I sold the duplex." Claire stood up so fast, her chair scraped the floor. "What do you mean you sold it?" "New owners move in 60 days. Ryan actually laughed a little. "Nah, come on, Dad. I'm serious. You can't just sell the house." "I already did." Claire grabbed the papers from him. "You didn't even discuss this with us?" I looked at her calmly. "There hasn't been much discussion around here for a long time." Ryan stood up hard enough to rattle the table. "Where are we supposed to go?" I looked him right in the eyes. I thought Claire's parents were the people you could count on. Silence. Real silence. Ryan's voice dropped. "You're seriously doing this over one comment?" I shook my head. "No, I'm doing it over years of them." Claire crossed her arms tightly. "This is cruel." I almost answered emotionally. Almost. But instead I said, "No, it's final." Then I walked back to my side of the duplex and shut the door quietly behind me. The phone calls started that night, first angry, then desperate, then apologetic. Ryan left voicemail after voicemail. You're hurting the kids. You're being unfair. How can you do this to your own family? Funny how the word family only showed up once the support disappeared. Claire's parents refused to let them stay there long term. Apparently, the guest room was too small. Ryan learned pretty fast that emotional speeches don't pay rent. A week later, he knocked on my door, looking exhausted. Eyes red, shoulders slumped. Dad, please. I stayed quiet. We can figure something out. We already did. You know how expensive things are right now? I do. For the first time in years, he looked scared instead of confident. I said stupid things? Yes. You're really willing to lose your family over this? I looked at him for a long moment before answering. I lost my family a long time ago, Ryan. I just finally stopped paying to pretend otherwise. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe he didn't. Closing day came gray and rainy. Movers loaded my furniture into a truck heading toward the lake community 2 hours north. Ryan stood outside watching quietly while Claire argued with somebody on the phone nearby. Probably another landlord, probably another rejection. Neither of them looked angry anymore, just uncertain. Like they suddenly realized the safety they depended on had never really belonged to them. I climbed into my truck just after sunrise. As I pulled away, my phone started vibrating again. Ryan, then again, and again. I turned the phone face down on the passenger seat and kept driving. The lake house was small and quiet. Pine trees along the shoreline, a wooden dock stretching over still water. By the time the movers finished unloading, sunlight was spreading across the lake. I carried my fishing rod down to the dock alone, no demands, no guilt, no feeling that I owed somebody another piece of myself just to keep them close. My phone vibrated one last time inside my jacket pocket. I turned it off completely. Then I cast my line into the water and watched the ripples spread across the lake until they disappeared. A family that only values what you provide will panic the second you stop providing it. And sometimes the only way people learn your worth is when your absence finally costs them something.